It wasn't until the 80th call that she finally picked up. "It's Ethan's birthday. What's wrong with me spending his birthday with him? Can't you stop being so petty and jealous?" I told her that her parents and sister had been in a car accident and that she needed to come handle the arrangements. She just sneered and said, "What does it matter to me if your whole family is dead?" Not only did she refuse to handle the arrangements, but as a forensic pathologist, she also perjured herself in court for her first love, the man who had killed her entire family. It wasn't until I asked for a divorce that she flew into a rage. "Sincere Clark, so what if a few people in your family died? Ethan didn't do it on purpose. Besides, it was your parents and sister who weren't watching the road. That's why it happened. You're being so aggressive, and now you want a divorce? I really misjudged you." Seeing the fury on her face, I understood. She never knew. All along, it was her entire family that had died. Chapter 1. My father-in-law, mother-in-law, and sister-in-law were thrown several meters by the impact. The next second, flames shot into the sky, and the sound of the car exploding pierced my eardrums. I froze on the spot, a chill seeping into my bones. It took a long moment for me to react. Even my fingers trembled as I dialed 911. After calming down slightly, I quickly called Victoria Hale, but she didn't answer. I called 80 times before she finally picked up. Before I could speak, Victoria's impatient voice came through the line. "Didn't I tell you not to bother me today? This is Ethan's first birthday back in the country. I just want to have a nice time with him. Can you not cause trouble right now?" Hearing Ethan Rhodes' name, I instinctively clenched my fists. I glanced back at my in-laws lying in a pool of blood and swallowed the questions I wanted to ask. My voice was anxious and trembling. "Mom, Dad, and Chloe were in a car crash. It's serious. They're being taken to the hospital for emergency treatment. You need to get here fast. I'll text you the address." Before I could finish, Victoria let out a sudden, careless laugh. "What does your family's car crash have to do with me? I'm not their daughter. It's not my place to take care of them, dead or alive. Don't bother me with this." The dial tone blared in my ear. My breath caught in my throat. For the first time, Victoria felt like a complete stranger. When the police arrived, they saw my devastated state and patted my shoulder, telling me to follow the ambulance to the hospital. Watching my in-laws being lifted onto stretchers, my hands still trembled, trapped in the aftershock of fear. Just minutes before the crash, my father-in-law, Arthur, had said he was thirsty, so I got out of the car to buy water at a nearby convenience store. When I returned, I witnessed my in-laws' car being sent flying over 10 meters, their bodies mangled beyond recognition. I didn't know whether to feel lucky that I had escaped, or heartbroken that this had happened to them. As I replayed the accident in my mind, I received a notification on my phone, a charge for over $5,000. It was from a store where I usually buy ties. Victoria wouldn't be shopping there for me. She barely gave me the time of day. That morning, to celebrate Ethan Rhodes' return, she had put on exquisite makeup and wore a dress she had previously treasured too much to wear. She had never put that much effort into a date with me. She would just mock me. "We've been married for years. Seeing your face every day is annoying enough. Makeup would be a waste of time." Then, another charge notification came through. This time, it was from a restaurant Victoria and I frequented. I tried calling her again, but she had turned her phone off. I could only see her recently updated social media feed, celebrating with the one I love. Even the cake tastes sweeter. The photo showed Victoria intimately feeding Ethan a piece of cake. Fury consumed me. Just then, the light above the operating room went out. A doctor came out and shook his head at me. "I'm sorry for your loss." My heart sank. Even though I had prepared myself, they were still family I had lived with for years. It would be a lie to say I wasn't sad. I glanced at my phone again. Their daughter was still out having fun. I let out a cold laugh and called the bank to freeze Victoria's card. Chapter 2. After I gave my statement, the police informed me that they had found security footage of the accident. I went with them to the station. When I saw the footage, my eyes widened. I rewound it a few seconds and paused on the car at fault. Even from the blurry image, I recognized him. It was Ethan Rhodes, who had just returned to the country. At that moment, the emotions I had been suppressing erupted. The whole time, I had been a complete joke. The man who killed Victoria's family was her first love. I laughed coldly. I wondered if Victoria would still be in the mood to celebrate her first love's birthday if she knew. The police officer, thinking I was having a breakdown from the shock, patted my shoulder to comfort me. I wiped my face and spoke calmly. I know that man. Officer, I request an autopsy. I spoke quickly. To them, I must have looked like a good son-in-law who couldn't accept the death of his wife's family. The officers exchanged glances but didn't refuse my request. As a family member, I had the right to request an autopsy. Mr. Clark, we understand how you feel, but the security footage is incomplete, so we can't definitively say that Ethan Rhodes committed intentional homicide. We need to investigate further. You can proceed with the autopsy process. I nodded, agreeing to cooperate with their investigation. As soon as I left the station, I turned my phone back on. It was immediately flooded with calls from Victoria. The moment I answered, her voice, cold as ice, cut through. Did you freeze my card? Sincere Clark, have I been too easy on you? What gives you the right to freeze my card? It's my money, Victoria. It's my debit card, linked to my salary. Do I need to remind you that you're spending my money? Victoria fell silent. When she spoke again, her tone was softer. We're married. There's no yours and mine. It's Ethan's birthday, and it's been so long since I've seen him. Do you have any idea how embarrassing it was for him to pay for his own celebration? Her incessant chatter grated on my nerves. I couldn't take it anymore and snapped. Are you done? Victoria seemed stunned by my outburst, freezing for a second. Sincere, did you just yell at me? Her voice was laced with grievance, and soon she began to sob. Victoria had always been like this, a spoiled brat without the pedigree to back it up. The slightest criticism would send her into tears. In the past, whenever she acted this way, I would immediately comfort her. I never hesitated to buy her designer bags. But now, the thought of her celebrating with the man who murdered her family made me feel like all the love I had given her was being trampled underfoot. It was worthless. Mom and Dad are dead, I informed her coldly. Remember to come back for the funeral. I never expected her next words to be even more shocking. Everyone dies eventually. The three of them dying together is a reunion of sorts. You can handle the funeral. I have a lot of bodies to dissect lately. She hung up after saying that. My eyes widened slightly as it hit me. She still didn't seem to realize it was her own parents who were dead. I pursed my lips and spoke to the police again. Excuse me, can I request a specific forensic pathologist for the autopsy? Please consider it my final request. Chapter 3. After leaving the police station, I went home and had my lawyer draft a lawsuit. Just after I sent it out, Victoria, who was supposedly busy with bodies to dissect, came home unexpectedly early. She stormed in, grabbed a glass of water from the table, and threw it at me. The glass shattered against the wall. Her chest heaved as she pointed a finger in my face and screamed, Sincere Clark, have you no shame? Ethan didn't mean to kill your family. You can't take your anger out on an innocent person just because your family died, Ethan told you? Victoria sneered. The police summoned him right after his birthday party. On the way to the station, he told me everything that happened. It wasn't intentional. He was just in a hurry to see me. Besides, she added, if Mom and Dad weren't so old and had watched where they were going, this wouldn't have happened. And your sister wouldn't have been dragged into it. At this, she noticed my expression and her tone softened slightly. Sincere, don't be too sad. What's done is done. Let it go. Don't make a big scene and embarrass everyone. I've already talked to Ethan. He's agreed to pay you $50,000 to settle this privately. I had to laugh. I stared straight at her. So, Mom, Dad, and Chloe's lives are worth just $50,000 for all three? Victoria's face darkened again. She shoved me, her voice low and threatening. Don't push your luck. $50,000 is a lot. Your parents were old. You would have had to take care of them. Now that they're gone, your life is much easier. Taking $50,000 is like getting free money. Victoria's attitude made it clear. She would stand by Ethan Rhodes no matter what. She would believe anything he said. A sharp pain pierced my heart. I smiled at her. I trust the law to reveal the truth. Seeing my resolve, Victoria gritted her teeth and snorted. I'm trying to be nice and you're throwing it back in my face. Don't come crying to me when you lose the case slam. Victoria stormed out. She spoke with such confidence, as if she was certain I would lose. It wasn't until the trial that I finally understood why she was so sure. On the day of the trial, the solemn courtroom was packed. In court, I presented the video of Ethan Rhodes hitting them with his car without hesitation. When the judge questioned him, Ethan stammered, I... Seeing Ethan falter, Victoria stood up to testify. As the forensic pathologist who performed the autopsy, I can provide evidence that the three deceased died of pre-existing medical conditions. not from the external force of a car accident. A single surveillance video proves nothing. Either present compelling evidence, or this is slander, Victoria declared confidently. She then produced the autopsy report. She had truly pulled out all the stops to help Ethan escape justice. Seeing my silence, a flicker of defiance and triumph crossed Victoria's eyes. I told you we should have settled this privately. What did you think you could accomplish with that flimsy evidence? Now you've just made a fool of yourself for everyone to see. Ethan, standing beside her, said consolingly, "Don't be so angry, Vicky. I don't want to ruin your marriage over me. Sincere, I need to apologize to you too, about your parents. I didn't do it on purpose. Vicky said 50,000 would be enough, but I personally feel that's not enough." With that, Ethan actually apologized to me in court, seeking a settlement. I remained impassive. "It's fine. I've accepted it. I've sent you my account number. Just wire the money there. I'm not asking for much, just 100,000. My parents' lives should at least be worth that much. They weren't that cheap." My sudden change in demeanor surprised Victoria. Ethan's face soured when he heard me ask for 100,000, but he ultimately agreed. I smiled with satisfaction when I saw the wire transfer for 100,000. Then I turned to Victoria. "I prepared the divorce papers. The city clerk's office is still open. Let's go get a divorce." Victoria froze for a moment, then snatched the papers from my hand. She sneered. "You want to divorce me over something so trivial? You're not a real man." She threw the documents on the floor, stomped on them a few times, and then, without another glance at me, grabbed Ethan and left. As she walked away, she said casually, "You should be happy you got the money. That's all your parents' and sister's lives were worth." I raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. She still thought it was my parents who had died. But we were married after all. As their daughter-in-law, you should at least see Mom, Dad, and Chloe one last time, right? Think of it as me saying a final goodbye to them. You're insane. Although Victoria called me insane, she still went with me to the morgue. She had dissected these 3 unrecognizable bodies multiple times. There was nothing more to see. Upon entering the morgue, Victoria looked impatient. It was then that I took out the 3 death certificates and said sorrowfully, "Mom, Dad, Chloe, Victoria's here to see you." When she saw the death certificates in my hand, she froze instantly. Her eyes widened, bloodshot and bulging. Chapter 4. Victoria seemed to be in disbelief, rubbing her eyes. Like a madwoman, she snatched the death certificates from my hand, her pupils dilated. I watched her stunned expression in silence. Even if I had told her, she wouldn't have believed me. It was better to show her the proof so she could see it with her own eyes. Victoria stumbled backward until her back hit the wall, her body trembling. "How is that possible? Weren't these 3 bodies your parents and your sister?" she muttered to herself, then looked up and grabbed my collar, shouting, "Why are my parents and sister here? Weren't your parents and sister the ones who died?" Victoria tried to take a deep breath to calm herself, but as her eyes swept over the 3 cold bodies, her vision went black, and she collapsed to the floor. Her colleagues were confused. "An autopsy requires family consent. Didn't you receive the notification text? We all thought you had already come to terms with it. That's why you agreed to perform the autopsy on your own family, as a way of saying goodbye." At her colleague's words, Victoria's memory seemed to jolt. She frantically pulled her phone from her pocket. With trembling fingers, she scrolled through her messages but found nothing. "I remember. I sent you the message, but unfortunately, you never read it," I said, glancing at the bodies of her family. The truth was, Chloe had died instantly upon impact, her brain matter spilling out. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, had died on the way to the hospital, and my father-in-law, Arthur, had died in the operating room after failed resuscitation attempts. The entire family had died a horrific death. Victoria sat on the floor, a look of bewilderment and despair in her eyes, her lips trembling. I didn't know it was my mom, dad, and sister." Her words were fragmented. Seeing her state, her colleagues could only ask her to leave. But Victoria seemed to have lost her mind, crawling on all fours to the bodies and kneeling on the floor, wailing hysterically. "Mom, Dad, sister, wake up. I didn't know it was you. How could you leave me all alone? It's fake. It's all fake." Victoria continued to delude herself, searching for an excuse. She whipped her head around to look at me, her eyes bloodshot. "Sincere, you must have paid someone off to do something to my parents. They're just acting along with you. You're all lying to me. Victoria completely broke down, wildly swinging a scalpel at the empty air. My expression remained unchanged as I told her, "Victoria, I know you can't accept their deaths right now, especially after you committed perjury for Ethan Rhodes. When I called to tell you, you refused to listen. It's time to wake up. Your parents and sister are really dead." I emphasized the last few words. Victoria's face turned ashen, as if all strength had drained from her. Chapter 5. Her colleagues helped her leave, while I stayed behind with the bodies of her family. I thought back to how she had repeatedly hung up on me, thinking my family had died and that I deserved to suffer. How she had allowed Ethan Rhodes to use money to humiliate 3 human lives. "Do you remember what you said to me in court?" Victoria's head was bowed, her expression hidden, but her body trembled at my words. "You said, with 3 people dying at once, you could even get a discount on cremation fees. What's not to be content about with a reunion in heaven? So, are you content now?" I smiled, seeing my expression. Victoria's crying intensified until she nearly passed out. She stumbled forward, her trembling hands grabbing my collar as tears streamed down her face. "Sincere, you did this on purpose. You knew it was my parents who died, but you deliberately didn't tell me you just wanted to see me like this, to get your revenge, didn't you?" I looked at her calmly. "Let's be clear. When they had the accident, I called you immediately. What were you so busy with then? You told me to handle it myself, that you had to celebrate Ethan's birthday, and that I shouldn't bother you." As my words sank in, Victoria froze for a moment, belatedly realizing she had indeed said those things. Her voice was choked with sobs, and she could barely speak. She started smashing everything around her as if to vent her frustration. "You must have done it on purpose to get back at me. You made me dissect my own parents' bodies." Victoria tried to shift all the blame onto me, but I wasn't going to be her scapegoat. "Victoria, they were killed right in front of me. They were thrown over 10 meters with blood and brain matter splattered everywhere. Do you have any idea how terrifying that was? I didn't want them to die in vain. And you, their own daughter, helped the perpetrator commit perjury." I didn't lower my voice, and others in the hallway turned to look, as if they had just overheard some incredible gossip. Victoria's eyes were red, and it took a long time for her to regain a sliver of composure. She immediately called Ethan Rhodes. As soon as he answered, he spoke in a flirtatious tone. "What's wrong? Miss me already?" His affected voice was nauseating, and Victoria's face grew even paler. She questioned him in a hoarse voice. "Did you delete my text messages? You told me you were scared, that you hit Sincere's family and might have killed someone. I committed perjury to protect you. Do you have any idea that if this gets out, I'll be in trouble too? But why did you lie to me? The people you hit were my parents and my sister by the end," she was screaming. Victoria, who had always been so concerned with her public image, now looked no different from a common shrew. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line before Ethan laughed and tried to comfort her. "Vicky, you've misunderstood me. You deleted the messages yourself. I really thought it was Sincere's family at the time. After all, they were so close. I never thought it would be. Please accept my condolences. Either way, life has to go on, doesn't it? You argued so forcefully on my behalf in court. You shouldn't let all that effort go to waste." It was then that I realized Ethan truly had wanted to kill her family. The calm way he said those words proved he was an extremely dangerous person. The reason Victoria had believed it was my family who died was because he had deliberately misled her and fed her false information. After the call ended, Victoria stared at her phone with empty eyes. The bodies couldn't stay in the morgue for long. I gave my consent to send them to the crematorium. Watching her parents and sister being wheeled out, Victoria murmured, "So, you've all abandoned me, haven't you?" I glanced at her but felt little sympathy. Ultimately, if she hadn't been so hung up on her first love, she wouldn't be in this miserable situation. What's done is done. She had no choice but to accept the fact that her family had been wiped out. After the cremation, Victoria took the urns home. The people who had been so vividly alive were now just small boxes of ash. Even I felt a sense of melancholy at the scene. Chapter 6. A month later, it was time for the second hearing. Even though I had accepted the money, the legal process had to continue. I had already moved out of the marital home I shared with Victoria and rented an apartment. The next time I saw her was at the courthouse entrance. She had lost a lot of weight. The leather coat she wore hung loosely on her frame. In contrast, Ethan Rhodes beside her was in high spirits. "Long time no see, Sincere. Let's hope for the best today." Ethan smiled, extending his hand for a handshake. He seemed confident about the outcome of the second hearing since there was still no conclusive evidence that he was the driver. "You seem very confident." I ignored his outstretched hand, but he wasn't fazed. "It's all a misunderstanding that can be cleared up. I've already spoken with Vicky. She'll continue to testify for me. As long as we agree to a settlement, everything will be fine." Ethan smugly put his arm around Victoria's shoulders. Victoria, however, remained silent. I looked away and said nothing more. During the hearing, Ethan's lawyer worked hard, trying every angle to get him acquitted, but Victoria, the key witness, said nothing. This made Ethan anxious. "Vicky, say something at that moment." I stood up. I presented the evidence of Ethan's previous settlement offer and the wire transfer records. When Ethan saw the evidence, he just scoffed. "What kind of evidence is that? At most, it proves you accepted a settlement offer. But you're mistaken. The people you killed weren't my parents, they were your witness's parents. Even as her husband, I have no legal standing to accept a settlement on her behalf." Ethan's face turned grim. He stared at Victoria, seemingly urging her to speak. I had expected Victoria to remain deluded, but to my surprise, she began to speak about Ethan's hit and run, and the fact that she had committed perjury for him. "Victoria, are you crazy? Do you know that saying this will ruin your career?" Veins bulged on Ethan's forehead. He had clearly not expected her to confess. Victoria wiped away a tear. "I can give up being a forensic pathologist. I can go to jail, but I cannot let my parents and sister die in vain while their murderer walks free." I pursed my lips and finally presented the conclusive evidence the police had gathered. "I want to charge Ethan Rhodes with intentional homicide. A hit and run and intentional homicide were two entirely different things." The turn of events left Ethan completely flustered. He tried to defend himself, but the evidence gathered by the police over weeks left him speechless. With sufficient evidence, Ethan Rhodes was found guilty of both hit and run and intentional homicide. He would spend the rest of his life in prison. As for Victoria, although she had committed perjury, her willingness to come forward and her colleagues' testimony that she had developed severe depression from the incident led the court to drop the charges against her. Before Ethan was taken away, Victoria tearfully asked him why he had killed her parents. Ethan just gave a scornful smile. "If it weren't for your parents getting in the way back then, we would have been together long ago." How could I not hate them? For something so trivial, Ethan had taken 3 lives. Chapter 7. After leaving the courthouse, Victoria followed closely behind me. Her hands were clenched, her nails digging into her palms. She hurried to my side, hesitating before speaking. Finally, she said one thing. "I'm sorry." I raised an eyebrow but didn't accept her apology. In the end, she had brought all of this on herself. Before and after our marriage, she had always stayed in contact with Ethan. Her parents disliked him, blaming him for making their daughter so lovesick. To maintain peace in our family, I had tolerated it. Seeing my silence, Victoria lowered her head even further. "I know you won't forgive me, but I had my reasons for hating you so much and saying those awful things." She seemed to want to tell me something but stopped herself. Whatever she wanted to say no longer mattered to me. "If there's nothing else, please sign the divorce papers." I took out the papers I had prepared. I had expected that, given her personality, the divorce wouldn't go smoothly and she would cause a scene. But I was surprised by how calm it was. From our first meeting to dating and marriage over so many years, I had truly loved Victoria. The only reason I had repeatedly tolerated her relationship with Ethan was because I loved her. Victoria hesitated for a long time before signing, but she finally wrote her name. She looked as if all her strength had left her, her already stooped posture slumping even more. She suddenly smiled and looked up. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness, but after the divorce, can we still be friends? I don't have any family left." Her eyes filled with tears, which spilled over and ran down her cheeks. Her fingers clutched helplessly at her clothes. Having lost her family, Victoria was now incredibly fragile. "Let's not. We ended things so badly, there's no need to be friends. Signing these papers calmly is the most dignified way to end things." Victoria's body trembled slightly, but she didn't argue. During the division of assets, Victoria didn't ask for the house I had bought. A forced smile played on her lips. "I'll live at my parents' house. You worked hard to buy this place. It hasn't been easy for you all these years. I'll stay at my parents' house. It'll be like they're still with me." The reason I had moved out was because I assumed she would want the house. After we first met, I knew Victoria was the one I wanted to marry. To marry her, I worked hard to build up some assets. Once I had the money, I bought a house by the sea in the suburbs, just as she had wanted. I was silent for a moment, then accepted. It seemed Victoria felt guilty for her past actions and wasn't going to fight over assets. After the cooling-off period, remember to get the divorce certificate. Ever since her family died, I hadn't been kind to her. Every time she heard my cold, distant tone, her eyes would redden. After all, I had never been so cold to her before. She wiped the tears from her eyes and nodded with effort. Her voice was choked. "Don't worry, I'll do whatever you want." Victoria moved back to her parents' old house. Although our marital home was still in my name, I had no intention of living there anymore. If I was going to leave the past behind, I had to do it completely. Chapter 8. I sold the house and bought a larger one closer to my office. Victoria was a total mama's girl, extremely dependent on her family. To accommodate her, I had bought our marital home near her parents' house so she could visit them often. But that meant my commute to work was incredibly long. I had to wake up at dawn every day to drive to the office, or I'd get caught in rush hour and be late. For years, I consistently got less than 5 hours of sleep. The lack of sleep and constant fatigue had taken a toll on my health. Looking back, it felt like I had lost myself for Victoria's sake. When my friends heard about what had happened with us and her parents, they were stunned. Before Ethan came back, you two seemed to have a pretty good relationship, right? We were all so jealous of you, man. I never thought you'd actually get a divorce. In the end, it was all Ethan's fault. I pursed my lips and didn't answer. That wasn't true. Victoria had always loved Ethan. For all that time, I was just pretending she loved me. But at least now that we were divorced, I could start a new life, free from her. Days later, just when I thought I could smoothly get the divorce certificate, Victoria reappeared. Like she was possessed, she started following me everywhere, every day. I learned from her former colleagues that she had resigned and would no longer work in forensics. I suspected that dissecting her own parents had left her with deep psychological trauma. I couldn't deny it. Suggesting she perform the autopsy was my form of revenge. I knew she wouldn't believe what I said. In her eyes, there was only Ethan. Once her first love returned, I, the second choice, became completely insignificant. It started to rain heavily, but Victoria remained standing downstairs from my apartment building. When she saw me coming home from work, she ran up crying and threw herself into my arms. "Hubby, where did you go? I couldn't find you at home. Mom, Dad, and Chloe are gone, and I'm all alone. I'm so scared." I was completely baffled. Just a short while ago, she had signed the divorce papers and sworn that we would be strangers from then on. Why was she acting like she had lost her mind today? My brow furrowed, and I immediately pushed her away. "Victoria, I suggest you don't do something you'll regret. The cooling-off period is over in 3 days, and then we can get the divorce certificate. If you don't want another lawsuit, stop harassing me." As soon as I finished speaking, Victoria looked at me in disbelief. She stared blankly for a long time before asking in a confused voice, "Divorce? Why do you want to divorce me? Have you fallen for someone else?" I rubbed my temples, having no desire for any more entanglement with her. "Can you stop pretending? We agreed to stay out of each other's lives." Victoria suddenly burst into tears, throwing a tantrum in the rain, causing passers-by to stop and stare. My face darkened as I tried to figure out how to get rid of her. Just then, my phone rang. It was the police calling to tell me something about Victoria. Chapter 9. Until the divorce was finalized, I was still legally her husband. From what the police told me, I finally understood. Victoria had completely lost her mind. I had noticed something was off about her when she saw the bodies of her parents and sister. The incident with Ethan was the final straw that caused her to have a complete mental breakdown, resulting in a scrambled memory. Her neighbors had seen her wandering around outside, clutching the urns, which had frightened their children. After several disturbances, the neighbors called the police. She was no longer living in her parents' old house, but at a nearby psychiatric hospital. Somehow, she had managed to get out today. Victoria's memory was now erratic, clear one moment and confused the next. After she calmed down, clarity returned to her eyes. When she saw me, tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry, Sincere. I don't know why I'm here. I know you don't want to see me, but I miss you so much. I'm sick, Sincere." As if afraid I wouldn't believe her, she took a medical report out of her bag. Her colleague had testified in court that her illness was real. Victoria sniffled, forcing a smile. "I was tricked by Ethan. He showed me a lot of photos to prove you were cheating, which is why I was so cold to you. I did love you, so I was jealous. When you told me about the car crash, I subconsciously assumed it was your family that had died. I said those awful things to you out of revenge. But I never imagined that, in a cruel twist of fate, it would be my parents who were killed, and that the person who hit them would be Ethan. She took a deep breath and held my hands. I could feel her body still trembling. For a moment, my own heart felt heavy. Don't worry, we'll get the divorce certificate in 3 days. I won't cause you any more trouble. On the day we got the divorce certificate, Victoria was accompanied by medical staff in case she had an episode. She wore a white dress, a birthday gift I had once given her. She had even put on delicate makeup. We went into the city clerk's office together. She remained silent the entire time. She quietly went through the process, signing and stamping the documents. Finally, we each held a red booklet. Unlike a marriage certificate, this one had the words divorce certificate printed on it. It meant that for the rest of our lives, there would be no more connection between us. The first thing Victoria said to me was, "Sincere, do I look beautiful?" I vaguely remembered her asking me the same thing with the same smile when she first tried on this dress. My throat felt dry, and I couldn't speak. She didn't wait for my reply before the medical staff led her away. I learned from them that Victoria's lucid moments were becoming rarer, and her suicidal tendencies were growing stronger. I took one last look at Victoria, then turned and walked away. Not long after the divorce, I was promoted. I would soon be transferred to another city, and it would be difficult to return. Before my flight, my friends came to see me off. They brought 2 pieces of news. Ethan Rhodes had committed suicide in prison. They said he had developed paranoia, constantly screaming that someone was trying to kill him, that someone was coming for revenge. I scoffed. He had reaped what he sowed. And then there was Victoria. She's dead too, apparently. Died in the psychiatric hospital. If you weren't leaving today, you could have made it to her funeral. I was silent for a moment, then shook my head. No, I didn't ask how Victoria had died. There was just a hint of regret in my heart. Since I had already started a new life, there was no reason to dwell on the past.